The noes are 150. The amendment is agreed to. The unfinished business is a request for a recorded vote on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Sessions, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the ayes prevail by voice vote. Clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment offered by Mr. Sessions of Texas.
Recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request will rise. Sufficient number having arisen. A recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their vote by electronic device. This is a 2-minute vote.
This amendment by Pete Sessions of Texas would strike from the bill, from the Homeland Security bill, a section which prohibits U.S. citizenship and immigration services from outsourcing to private contractors the positions of immigration officers, contact representative, or investigative assistants. This is a 2-minute vote. 5 more amendment votes after this, including one by Brad Sherman of California, which would prohibit use of funds in the Homeland Security bill from supporting the Libyan mission, the military mission in Libya, and that will be coming up. That'll be the 6th amendment vote we see here. On that line, Congressman, or I should say Secretary Gates, Defense Secretary Gates today, is criticizing a potential resolution on Libya that may come up on the House floor today. Politico's Mike Allen writes that Jeff Morrell, the Pentagon's press secretary, issued a statement saying, quote, Secretary Gates believes that for the United States, once committed to a NATO operation, to unilaterally abandon that mission would have enormous and dangerous long-term consequences. He's referring to an amendment offered by Dennis Kucinich, not an amendment, a resolution by Dennis Kucinich of Ohio, calling for an immediate end to U.S. operations in Libya. Well, there's also been a companion Republican resolution introduced by Michael Turner of Ohio, who introduced that today. His resolution says, quote, that the House does not approve the United States intervention in Libya. It's possible we'll see action on one or both of those tomorrow in the House. They are in tomorrow, and they'll start their session at 9 o'clock Eastern.
On this vote, the yeas are 218, the noes are 204. The amendment is agreed to. The unfinished business is a request for a recorded vote on the amendment offered by the gentlelady from Wyoming, Ms. Loomis, on which further proceedings were postponed, on which the ayes prevail by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment offered by Mrs. Loomis of Wyoming.
Been requested. Those in support of the request will rise. A sufficient number having arisen. A recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their vote by electronic device. This is again a 2-minute vote.
Cynthia Loomis's amendment to the Homeland Security bill would strike a section from the bill that allows limited transfer of funds from the Department of Homeland Security to the Department of Interior for environmental mitigation requirements that would be associated with the construction of a border fence. It's a 2-minute vote, and 4 more amendment votes coming on the House floor.
On this vote, the yeas are 238, the noes are 177. The amendment is agreed to. The unfinished business is a request for a recorded vote on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Carter, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the ayes prevail by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 1, printed in the congressional record, offered by Mr. Carter of Texas.
Recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request will rise. Sufficient number having arisen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their vote by electronic device. This is a 2-minute vote.
An amendment to the $42 billion fiscal year 2012 Homeland Security Bill. This is from John Carter of Texas. The amendment would prohibit the Department of Homeland Security from participating in the White House Interagency Climate Change Adaptation Task Force. Another 2-minute vote on the House floor, and 3 more amendment votes will follow that. What we expect will follow this is the beginning, at least, of some discussion on the rule for the spending bill for fiscal year 2012 for the Military Construction and Veterans Affairs Bill. That's coming up on the House floor. Also, we're keeping our eyes on today a meeting with House Freshman and Timothy Geithner, the Treasury Secretary. He's coming up to Capitol Hill to talk about the debt limit. He'll be speaking with House Freshmen. We'll have cameras keeping an eye on that for any comments that may come. We're also looking at now, it's happening now and winding up in New Hampshire, Mitt Romney, who announced today his run for the presidency in the Republican Party, saying today that Barack Obama, quote, has failed the United States. That is underway now, actually wrapping up, and that's over on C-SPAN 3. You can follow that, and you'll also see it shortly in our video library at cspan.org in case you missed it.
On this vote, the yeas are 238, the noes are 178.
Mr. Stearns. Mr. Stearns votes aye. Mr. Serrano. Mr. Serrano votes no. Ms. Velasquez. Ms. Velasquez votes no. Mr. Gutierrez. Mr. Gutierrez votes no.
On this vote, the yeas are 242, the noes are 180. The amendment is agreed to. The unfinished business is a request for a recorded vote on the amendment offered by the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Price, on which further proceedings were postponed, on which the noes prevail by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment offered by Mr. Price of North Carolina.
Recorded vote has been requested. A sufficient number having arisen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their vote by electronic device. This is a 2-minute vote.
The proposed fiscal year 2012 spending bill for Homeland Security is $42 billion, 3% less than this year, 6% less than requested by President Obama. The bill restructures the way FEMA distributes money to state and local governments, and this amendment by David Price of North Carolina, Democrat of North Carolina, would extend the waivers of firefighter grant requirements, this to keep firefighters from being laid off in addition to hiring new firefighters. 2 more amendment votes will follow, and the House will move on after that to initial debate on the rule for the 2012 spending bill for military construction and Veterans Affairs.
On this vote, the yeas are 264, the noes are 157. The amendment is agreed to. The unfinished business is a request for a recorded vote on the amendment offered by the gentleman from California, Mr. Sherman, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the noes prevail by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment offered by Mr. Sherman of California.
Vote has been requested. A sufficient number having arisen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their vote by electronic device. This is a 2-minute vote.
The House has been voting on proposed amendments to the fiscal year 2012 Homeland Security Spending Bill. This is the 5th out of 7 amendment votes. It's a 2-minute vote, and this one by Brad Sherman of California. And another look at how the House may vote overall on U.S. operations in Libya. This particular amendment by Congressman Sherman would prohibit the use of funds in the Homeland Security Bill from being used in the operations in Libya. Interesting to watch to see how this vote falls, and then tomorrow possible action on resolutions dealing with Libya. The Associated Press reports this afternoon that congressional officials say House Republican leadership is crafting legislation to allow the U.S. military to continue participating in the NATO-led operation against Libya. The AP says the measure would be an alternative to anti-war Democrat Dennis Kucinich's proposal to end U.S. involvement, and it would set up House members for a potential political tug-of-war, even as dozens of their own yearn for precisely that kind of showdown with President Barack Obama. Any action on that is likely tomorrow. A vote on that issue was postponed Wednesday, and officials say the AP in both parties say it was because Congressman Kucinich's legislation was gaining ground. The House is in tomorrow. They're set to come in at 9 a.m. Eastern. So one more vote here after this one, and then the House moves on to initial consideration of the Military Construction and Veterans Affairs Bill for fiscal year 2012. They'll work on the rule for that, but they're not done with Homeland Security yet, although their goal is to finish work on that bill sometime today.
The yeas are 208, the noes are 213. The amendment is not agreed to. The unfinished business is a request for a recorded vote on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Gosar, in which further proceedings were postponed and on which the ayes prevail by voice vote. Clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment offered by Mr. Gosar of Arizona.
A recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request will rise. Sufficient number having arisen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their vote by electronic device. This is a 2-minute vote.
That amendment by Brad Sherman of California fell by a vote of 208 to 213. One of the 7 amendments here proposed to the Homeland Security spending bill. This is the last amendment vote in this series, this one by Paul Gosar of Arizona. Following this, we expect the House to begin initial consideration of the spending bill, fiscal year 2012 spending bill for Military Construction and Veterans Affairs. They'll begin debate on the rule. Still work ahead, though, remaining on Homeland Security, and the House is hoping to finish work on that sometime today.
Both the yeas are 183, the noes are 234. The amendment is not agreed to. Committee will be in order. Committee will be in order. What purpose, gentleman from Alabama, rise?
Mr. Chairman, I move the committee do now rise.
Questions on the motion? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The ayes have it. The committee rises. Mr. Speaker, the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union, having had under consideration H.R. 2017, directs me to report that it has come to no resolution thereon.
Chairman of the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union reports that the committee has had under consideration H.R. 2017 has come to no resolution thereon. For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, by the direction of the Committee on Rules, I call up House Resolution 288 and ask for its immediate consideration.
The clerk will report the resolution.
House Calendar Number 43, House Resolution 288, resolved that at any time after the adoption of this resolution, the Speaker may, pursuant to Clause 2B of Rule 18, declare the House resolved to the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union for consideration of the bill H.R. 2055, making appropriations for military construction, the Department of Veterans Affairs, and related agencies for the fiscal year ending September 30, 2012, and for other purposes. The first reading of the bill shall be dispensed with. All points of order against consideration of the bill are waived. General debate shall be confined to the bill and shall not exceed 1 hour, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Appropriations. After general debate, the bill shall be considered for amendment under the 5-minute rule. Points of order against provisions in the bill for failure to comply with Clause 2 of Rule 21 are waived. During consideration of the bill for amendment, the chair of the Committee of the Whole may accord priority in recognition on the basis of whether the member offering an amendment has caused it to be printed in the portion of the congressional record designated for that purpose in Clause 8 of Rule 18. Amendments so printed shall be considered as read. When the committee rises and reports the bill back to the House, with a recommendation that the bill do pass, the previous question shall be considered as ordered on the bill as amendments thereto to final passage without intervening motion except one. Proceedings under Section 2 of this resolution, and 2. One motion to recommit with or without instructions. Section 2. The proceedings referred to in the first section of this resolution are as follows. A. After disposition of any amendments reported from the Committee of the Whole, the Chair shall put the question on retaining the title beginning on page 25, line 14, Department of Veterans Affairs, and B, after disposition of the question under subsection A, the Chair shall put the question on engrossment and third reading of the text comprising of those portions of the bill as perfected, 1, retained by the House pursuant to subsection A, and 2, not subject to proceedings under subsection A. Section 3, in the engrossment of H.R. 2055, the clerk shall conform the title and section numbers and make related corrections to cross-references in the event of a portion of the bill that is not retained pursuant to Section 2 of this resolution.
The gentleman from Florida will be recognized for 1 hour.
For the purposes of debate only, I yield the customary 30 minutes to my good friend, gentleman from Florida, Mr. Hastings, pending which I yield myself such time as I may consume. During the consideration of this resolution, all time yielded is for the purpose of debate only. Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks.
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today in support of this rule and the underlying bill. This House Resolution 288 provides for an open rule for consideration of House Resolution 2055, the Military Construction, Veterans Affairs, and Related Agencies Appropriation Act of 2012. This rule provides for ample debate and opportunities for the members of the minority and majority party to participate in that debate. The rule places no limitation on the number of amendments that may be considered as long as they comply with the House rules. Similar to the open rule that was passed yesterday on the Department of Homeland Security Appropriations Bill, the only differences are in Section 2 of this rule does allow for a separate vote on an entitled addressing the Department of Veterans Affairs. In doing so, we're delivering on the Speaker's promise to reduce the so-called omnibus bills and give members the opportunity to have an up and down vote on cabinet-level departments contained in the bill. Part of the Speaker's and Rules Committee Chairman's commitment is to have more open and transparent process. And in the end, that's what this does. It's an open bill that rule that allows for debate and for amendments. I think every member of the Congress was elected by a group of people in their district, citizens in their district, and they assumed that that member would be able to come and debate and offer amendments to bills at will. Sometimes that's not the case, but it is the case in this particular time. Every one of us come here, whether Republican or Democrat, liberal, moderate, conservative, with the desire of affecting public policy in a real way. And the only way that can happen is when the process is more open and more honest and more transparent. And that's what this rule does for this particular bill. It's been a long time, yesterday being one of the first times, but a long time since we've considered an appropriation bill with an open rule. This bill does not have it's truly, I would say, a bipartisan effort. It's one of the first times, and I am very delighted to present this, the underlying bill through this rule because it is such a bipartisan effort. Even the rule itself was adopted by unanimous consent by the Rules Committee, which is something I have not experienced in my first 5 months here. So that, too, is something very, very different. I think that's the way the process should work. I think we've got to work together. We've got problems in this country, and they're deep problems. And if we don't work together, we'll never solve them. I think this may be a start of something that might be a little different than the way it's been. The Democrats on the Appropriation Committee said these things about this bill. The bill sufficiently funds critical military construction, family housing, and quality of life improvements for our brave men and women in uniform and their families. The bill meets the need of our military veteran communities for the coming year. That really states the purposes of this bill. And so, to me, it has met the needs not only in the eyes of Democrats but also Republicans. Further, the care for our veterans and servicemen and women is not a partisan issue. It's not, and it's proven out in this particular rule and this bill. I'd like to stress that there are many programs funded at previous levels or above previous levels, and kept the promise to made to our men and women in uniform. It increases Veteran Affairs budget for things like veterans benefits and health programs by $8.7 billion to $127.7 billion. It includes full funding for VA compensation and benefits, education benefits, vocational rehabilitation, and housing programs. It contains $52 billion in advanced funding for the VA, the same level passed in the House budget resolution for medical services, medical support, and compliance and medical facilities. This advanced funding will ensure that our veterans have full access to their medical care needs regardless of where we stand in our annual appropriations process. Once again, Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of this rule and the underlying legislation. The Appropriation Committee has worked to provide us with a fiscally responsible appropriation bill that promises to meet the needs of our military, our construction, and our promises to the American veterans. I encourage my colleagues to vote yes on the rule and yes on the underlying bill, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Florida.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my good friend from Florida, Mr. Webster, for yielding the customary time. As he has said, the Military Construction and Veterans Affairs Appropriations Act for fiscal year 2012 provides $144 billion in appropriations for veterans programs, military construction projects, and other agencies and programs. This bipartisan effort, and Mr. Webster underscored that, and I echo his sentiments in that regard, brought Democrats and Republicans together to craft legislation that provides the necessary funds for important military construction projects, as well as improves the quality of life for veterans and military families. One of our colleagues who no longer serves here would be very proud of this measure. He and Mr. Dix and others worked together for years. But I know Ike Skelton spent the greater portion of his career working to improve the quality of life for veterans and military families. So I pay homage to him that I have the privilege of presenting this measure on the floor. It increases overall funding for veterans' health and benefits programs, ensuring that servicemen and women who have dedicated themselves to our country will continue to receive the benefits they deserve. This legislation provides $14 billion in military construction for a wide range of new, upgraded, and improved housing projects for members of the military and their families. This funding also includes important upgrades for military medical facilities and Defense Department education facilities located both here at home and on bases around the world. The Department of Veterans Affairs has provided a total of $128 billion in budget authority, an increase of almost $9 billion over last year. This legislation ensures full funding for essential VA compensation and benefits programs in areas like education, vocational training, and housing assistance. It also includes $52 billion in advance funding for the VA, ensuring that veterans will continue to have full access to their medical care needs, regardless of where Congress stands in the annual appropriations process. This underlying legislation includes funding for important national programs and activities such as Arlington National Cemetery, the American Battle Monuments Commission, the U.S. Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims, and the Armed Forces Retirement Home. However, Mr. Speaker, I'm a little disappointed to see that the majority included an unfortunately political and possibly divisive amendment regarding project labor agreements. In February of 2009, President Obama issued an executive order to allow federal agencies to consider requiring the use of project labor agreements in connection with large-scale construction projects. The executive order did not mandate the use of these agreements. In fact, the order explicitly states that federal officials have the option to determine if these agreements are right for a project. Unfortunately, the committee adopted an amendment to the underlying legislation that prohibits funds from being used to implement this order, effectively blocking agencies from even considering such labor agreements. These labor agreements are useful to promote the economy and efficiency in federal procurement practices. A project labor agreement is a pre-hire agreement that establishes the terms and conditions of employment for a specific construction project, and it can be a useful tool to ensure coordination on large-scale projects involving multiple employers. The executive order still allows for competition in contracts and subcontracts, contains guarantees against strikes and similar job disruptions, and provides mechanisms for management and labor cooperation. But while the executive order does not mandate the use of project labor agreements, the language adopted by the committee rules out that possibility altogether. The executive order ensures that construction projects are built correctly the first time, on time, and as a result, on budget. Frankly, this is an inappropriate and unnecessary politicization of this appropriations bill, and I believe in the end will simply add cost to the taxpayer through a less efficient procurement process. At this time, Mr. Speaker, I would like to point out that I'm also troubled by the provision regarding Guantanamo Bay detainees. This legislation, indeed all of the appropriations bills, are going to include provisions to prohibit funds to renovate, expand, or construct facilities in the United States in order to house Guantanamo Bay detainees. Let me say the same thing I said during last year's appropriation cycle when similar language was included. The language in this bill is not going to solve the problem of what to do with the indefinite detention of individuals at Guantanamo Bay. The debate over Guantanamo is missing the larger picture, and that is the need to reform our entire detainment policy. As I have maintained, the problem is the policy, not the place. Without a system of justice to deal with suspected terrorists wherever they are held, we are left with a broken system that has been a significant recruiting tool for al-Qaeda and other groups which threaten our security. We need to deny them that image of America. We need a judicial process that accomplishes three things. One, protects our national security by holding and prosecuting those who have committed crimes or pose a threat to our country. Two, upholds international standards of human rights. And three, strengthens our nation's image as a country that upholds the rule of law and does not resort to arbitrary justice even while under threat. The underlying legislation is the second appropriations bill this cycle to contain provisions relating to Guantanamo. I expect that the remaining bills also will include this language. At some point soon, we're going to need to move beyond trying to legislate this matter into appropriations bills and instead deal with establishing new and appropriate policies and guidelines to bring our national security needs in line with our historic national values. Mr. Speaker, the underlying legislation contains essential funding for critical military construction programs and for our nation's veterans. It is fitting that we consider this legislation so soon after Memorial Day, when the sacrifices made by so many servicemen and women are still on our minds. Veterans deserve our thanks and our admiration, and we owe them the necessary resources to meet their health care, education, and housing needs. I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Florida.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield 5 minutes to the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Nugent.
The gentleman from Florida is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I also thank my friend, my fellow Floridian and Rules member, Mr. Webster, for the opportunity to speak in support of this rule and also in support of the underlying legislation, H.R. 2055, which appropriates funds for military construction and our nation's veterans. Mr. Speaker, Florida's 5th Congressional District, which I represent, is home to over 116,000 veterans, one of the highest veteran populations of any district in America. The funds we're talking about here today have a direct effect on the lives of the men and women who have proudly served our nation in uniform. This bill provides for full funding for the VA and health and education benefits. It also funds vocational rehabilitation training for those troops who come home from war with service-connected disabilities. Thanks to programs like Vet Success, these veterans can work with job counselors to develop skills necessary to find meaningful civilian employment. These programs also help connect veterans who are unable to work and give them additional training to allow them to be independent living in America. Given a number of veterans living in my district, I'm lucky enough to have visited a large number of VA health and benefit facilities throughout my district. During these trips, I had the opportunity to see and visit with a number of physicians, nurses, and staff, which these funds help keep on the mission of protecting and taking care of our veterans on a daily basis. I've also had the opportunity to speak with the true American heroes, those who answered the call for duty and put their life on the line to protect our country, our way of life, and our freedoms. Mr. Speaker, we as a nation owe our veterans a debt that can never be repaid. However, as members of Congress, we can ensure that we keep our promise to our troops. H.R. 2055 fully funds the benefits that gives our veterans back a small measure of what they truly deserve. As a member of the Rules Committee, I'm proud of this rule. We're continuing to make the 112th Congress the most open, transparent Congress the American people have seen in years. In fact, this may be the first rule that I've seen that was a voice vote unanimously approving the rule. I'd like to thank the Appropriations Committee for their hard work on this underlying legislation that this rule will bring to the House floor. I spoke to you about visiting hospitals within my district. Haley Hospital, the VA hospital in Tampa, I've got to meet a number of those that have had serious brain traumatic injuries, amputees, those that have the ability to try to get their lives back on track after giving so much to this nation. I had them point to the stars on my chest here that indicate that I have 3 sons serving. And they were more concerned about me as a dad than their own physical infirmities that they're fighting to try to overcome. You know, Mr. Speaker, as a father of 3 sons who are currently serving in the United States Army, we've been blessed as a family and as a nation, and as my older son came back of 15 months in Afghanistan in combat, but for the grace of God, he came back whole, not like so many others that have served this country and given so much. So H.R. 2055 is a good bill, and this rule is a good rule. I encourage my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to support them both. With that, I yield back the balance of my time.
So the gentleman from Florida reserves. The gentleman from Florida is recognized.
I thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Before turning over to Mr. Dix, I'd like to point out that during the Rules Committee hearing, Mr. Sanford Bishop, the ranking member of the subcommittee, raised a concern about the consequence of requiring separate votes on various parts of the bill. We feel that this is a serious issue, and we intend to continue to monitor the process closely as we consider the remaining appropriations bills. Mr. Speaker, I'm very pleased at this time to yield 3 minutes to my good friend, the distinguished gentleman from Washington, Mr. Dix, the ranking member of the Appropriations Committee.
For how much time?
Mr. Speaker, I rise in reluctant opposition to this rule and need to take a moment to explain why. Because I know many members, especially members of the minority, appreciate the openness of the amendment process. My concerns lie elsewhere with this rule, namely that this rule for the first time requires a separate vote in the House on Title II instead of following the regular order process. Mr. Speaker, I believe this procedural change sets a very bad precedent for the Appropriations Committee and for the House as a whole. Our committee currently had 12 subcommittees which cover every agency and program we fund through discretionary appropriations. Over the years that I have served on this committee, those jurisdictions have been changed, broadened, narrowed, switched places, and we have even created new subcommittees to address the current need, such as the Homeland Security Subcommittee following the terrible events of 9/11. There have also been realignments based on political dynamics, such as the abolition of the old VA HUD subcommittee, which had forced veterans, housing, and NASA programs to all compete within the same bill and same allocation for annual funding. We now fund Veterans Affairs with military construction. If the majority is unhappy with the current subcommittee makeup or believes an agency should stand alone for individual approval, they have every tool available to them to change the jurisdictions. We need not change the way we consider these bills on the floor and complicated a fairly straightforward process members are already familiar with. As the ranking member of this committee on appropriations, I must also focus on the impact this change would have on our entire process, especially our process of reconciling these bills with the other body. The theoretical defeat of a title compromises the position of the House in conference committee negotiations. Now, I don't think that will happen on the Milcon VA bill. However, in some instances, the House may reject a title. In that circumstance, how does the House proceed to conference with the Senate on that particular bill? We cannot just decline to fund an entire title and then go on to negotiate its terms with the Senate. Striking a title of an appropriations bill will limit the House's ability to negotiate anything in that title by limiting the scope of that conference to only measures approved by both chambers. Mr. Speaker, I am grateful for the open amendment process this rule provides, but do wish that we would stick to true regular order for consideration of this bill. And I just want to also just add that this is a good bill, and it could be a little better, but I think this is a bill that should be passed overwhelmingly. Thank you.
The ranking member yields back. Gentleman from Florida.
My colleague would indicate I'm prepared, to indicate to him that I'm prepared to close at this time. So I don't know whether you have other speakers.
Okay, the gentleman from Florida on the Democratic side is prepared to close. The gentleman from Florida.
I'm prepared to close, so I yield back my time and let the gentleman.
The gentleman reserves. Does the gentleman reserve the balance of his time?
I do reserve. Yes.
Gentleman from Florida reserves.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. At this time, so soon after commemorating Memorial Day and honoring our nation's veterans, we all can be pleased by the level of support, bipartisan support, provided in this legislation for essential veterans programs. We all know that they deserve the very best support our nation has to offer. And I'm pleased to know that Democrats and Republicans came together to craft legislation that provides the necessary resources for veterans and their families. As I pointed out, I wish that the language relating to project labor agreements was not in this bill. I believe that President Obama's executive order gives, rightly, federal officials flexibility in determining the most cost-efficient method of completing large-scale construction projects. The executive order simply provides options, and the language in the bill by the majority closes those options off. This is going to be, in my view, inefficient and costly and shouldn't be included in the underlying legislation. So, too, must this Congress deal reasonably with the issues that I spoke of regarding Guantanamo Bay. Congress has a responsibility to ensure that the United States upholds the rule of law, remains true to the great foundational ideals of our democracy, and has flexibility in its counterterrorism policies to ensure an effective national security strategy. I urge my colleagues to vote yes on the rule, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Florida yields back. The gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As you heard me say earlier, my Republican colleagues and I are committed to providing a more open and transparent and accountable process here, and today's bill is a monumental step towards that right direction. And it's an example of a big desire within our own Speaker's heart to change the way things work here in Washington. The underlying bill has bipartisan support, went through the regular order. It was provided an open rule to allow Republicans and Democrats alike to bring up their ideas and debate them, even some that have been brought up by the minority here. Those are brought up in a way that we'll have an opportunity to amend at a later date. I yield.
Yielding. Can the gentleman explain why all of a sudden the new majority has decided to have a separate vote on one department and risk the possibility of going to conference, say, with military construction but not with the Veterans Affairs? What is the purpose for this, especially with an open rule when you can vote on any provision in the bill?
In doing so, we are delivering on the Speaker's promise to reduce so-called omnibus bills to a smaller, more understandable bill that gives members the opportunity to have an up or down vote on cabinet-level departments contained in the bill. I will tell you this, that I experienced the same thing. I used to be a leader of a group in Florida, which was known as the House of Representatives, and the Speaker there, we did the same thing. It was the first time ever, and I always knew, a lot of people questioned, can you divide up the different appropriations and send them to a Senate who may have a smaller, yes, you can. And basically all we did was break up the conferences. The conferences stayed exactly the same. The members were appointed, and 2 bills, let's say, instead of 1, was sent to a particular conference, while the Senate added their 1, and then they were combined at a later date and passed as a General Appropriation Act. So it can work. I promise you. I know it's new. I know it's different. I know you probably would question that, and there's some thing behind it.
Do you think it's a good idea?
I do believe it's a good idea. And the reason I believe it's a good idea because I think there was some angst about looking at a large package at one time. And this is just an opportunity to break it up. I don't think it changes anything. I think it gives us an opportunity to actually scrutinize in a better way.
You know, you could have another subcommittee. You could have a subcommittee do Veterans Administration and one do Homeland Security. Anybody thought about that?
I don't know.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate gentleman yielding.
I reclaim my time, and I'll start where I left off. Anyway, the vote on the rule, which provides an open and transparent process, which makes no limitations on amendments, where ideas and policies will rise and fall on their merits and their basis and debate and so forth, is an awesome opportunity for this House to speak its will. Not just an up and down vote on one bill, but an up and down vote on amendment after amendment in order to perfect the bill. The clash of ideas is a good thing. And as we debate these ideas and we hear them on the floor of the House and then we have an opportunity to vote on, it makes a good bill a better bill. This is what the American people expect from their elected officials. It is a expectation that is fulfilled by the rule and produced in the underlying bill, I encourage all my colleagues to join me in supporting this underlying passage of this bill. For over 2 centuries, our U.S. military has protected America from both our enemies and the enemies of our friends. The valor and dignity and courage of our men and women in uniform remains strong from Valley Forge to Desert Storm, from San Juan Hill to Operation Enduring Freedom. The fighting spirit of American soldiers shines throughout history. It is due to the lives selflessly lived and lost in defense of our country that we have the privilege to stand here today free and grateful. So thank you, veterans. Thank you for, and I too am glad that this happened just a few days after Memorial Day, because it is a great way to remember the people that have given their lives for our country. I yield back the balance of my time, and I move the previous question on the resolution.
The gentleman has yielded back his time. Without objection, the previous question is ordered. The question is on the adoption of the resolution. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. The resolution is adopted. Without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. Now, pursuant to House Resolution 287 and Rule 18, the Chair declares the House in the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union for the further consideration of H.R. 2017. Will the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Gingrey, kindly take the chair?
The House is in the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union for the further consideration of H.R. 2017, which the clerk will report by title.
A bill making appropriations for the Department of Homeland Security for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2012, and for other purposes.
When the Committee of the Whole rose earlier today, the amendment offered by the gentlewoman from Texas, Ms. Jackson Lee, had been disposed of, and the bill had been read through page 92, line 7. What purpose does the gentleman from Oklahoma seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 42, printed in the Congressional Record, offered by Mr. Cole of Oklahoma.
Mr. Chairman, I'd ask
gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized for 5 minutes.
Be dispensed with.
Without objection.
Mr. Chairman, in April, a draft executive order was circulated that would force companies, as a condition of applying for a federal contract, to disclose all federal campaign contributions. In my view, if implemented, this executive order would lead to a significant politicization of the federal procurement process. Instead of a company being evaluated and judged on its merits, their past work experience, their ability to complete the government contract in question, this executive order would introduce the potential that they would be evaluated politically as opposed to professionally. It's never a good idea, Mr. Chairman, in my view, to mix politics with contracting. My amendment would prevent the President from implementing the proposed disclosure requirements. Congress actually considered something similar to what the President is proposing in the 111th Congress, the so-called Disclose Act. It's instructive to me that that Congress, the majority of which in both houses was controlled by my friends on the other side, decided not to implement such a requirement. Frankly, I think doing so now by executive order is effectively legislating through the executive branch. The executive order in question that's being considered would not, in fact, lead to more objectivity in the bidding process, and it could potentially chill the constitutionally protected right of people to donate politically to whatever candidate, political party, or cause that they chose to do so. It's worth noting that nothing in this amendment would affect the current federal disclosures under the law. We're not trying to change things. We're not trying to let people do something they can't do now. We're simply trying to make sure that political contributions and political activities never move into the contracting process. Pay-to-play has no place in the federal contracting process, and requiring the disclosure of campaign contributions
for Government Contracts does just that. Mr. Chairman, I would respectfully urge that the amendment be adopted, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman may not reserve.